There's a particular kind of loneliness that doesn't announce itself. It doesn't arrive when you're sitting alone in your room on a Friday night. It comes when you're standing in the middle of a party, surrounded by laughter and conversation, and you realize that despite all the noise, despite all the bodies pressed close together, you have never felt more invisible. You learned this feeling early. Perhaps you were the child who sat at the dinner table while everyone else talked over you. Not because they were cruel, but because they were loud, and you were quiet. And somewhere along the way, you understood that your voice didn't carry the same weight, so you stopped trying to make it heard. Or maybe you were the one who learned to read the room before you entered it, to scan faces for signs of tension or approval, to measure your words so carefully that by the time you decided what to say, the conversation had already moved on. This is how a child disappears, not all at once, but sentence by sentence, until they're standing right there and no one notices they haven't spoken in an hour. What you learned was attunement. The psychological term for this is hypervigilance, though that word makes it sound like a disorder when really it was an adaptation. You became exquisitely sensitive to other people's emotional states because you had to be, because somewhere in your early environment, your safety or your sense of belonging depended on your ability to read the unspoken, to adjust yourself before anyone had to ask. Children who develop this capacity often do so in homes where emotional space was limited, not necessarily abusive homes, not even obviously neglectful ones, just homes where attention was scarce or conditional, where love was present but distracted, where the adults were dealing with their own pain and didn't have much room left over for yours. So you learned to take up less space. You learned to be the easy one, the independent one, the one who didn't need anything. And this worked, in a way. It kept you safe. It kept you connected to people who couldn't offer you more than they were already giving. But what saved you then, now imprisons you. Because now, decades later, you walk into a room full of people and that old system activates. You're not consciously thinking about it, but your nervous system remembers. It remembers that to belong, you must first assess. You must read the energy, match it, adjust yourself to fit whatever shape the group needs you to be. And so while everyone else is simply being, you are performing a complex calculation. You're tracking who's dominant in the conversation, who seems withdrawn, what topics are safe, what would be too much. You're editing yourself in real time, trimming away the parts of you that might not land right, might be too intense, might shift the energy in a way that makes people uncomfortable. This is exhausting in a way that's hard to explain to people who don't do it, because from the outside you might look fine, you might even look social. You're nodding, smiling, sometimes even talking, but inside there's a relentless monitoring happening, a constant awareness that you are separate from what's occurring around you, watching it rather than living it. The loneliness comes from this gap, this space between the person you're presenting and the person you actually are. You're there, but you're not there. You're participating, but through a layer of glass that no one else can see. And here's what makes it more painful. You're often surrounded by people who genuinely like you, people who would tell you they consider you a friend, people who enjoy your company, but they don't know you, not really, because the version of yourself you've learned to show them is the one that fits, the one that's safe, the one that doesn't ask for too much, or reveal too much, or need too much. Without realizing it, you've become a mirror. You reflect back what people need to see, what they want to hear, what keeps the interaction smooth and easy. And people love you for this. They feel comfortable around you. They feel heard by you, but they don't see you because you've never shown them where you actually live. This pattern often creates what psychologists call stable but shallow relationships, connections that last for years but never deepen past a certain point. People who know your opinions on movies and your preference for coffee, but have no idea about the fear you carry, or the grief you've never spoken, or the way you sometimes feel like you're watching your own life from behind your eyes instead of actually living it. The cruel irony is that you're lonely because you're too good at connecting. You've mastered the art of making other people feel seen while remaining unseen yourself. You've learned to create the illusion of intimacy without ever actually letting anyone in. And the reason you do this, the reason you can't just stop and be yourself, is because somewhere deep in your nervous system, being yourself feels dangerous. It feels like a risk you can't afford to take. Because the last time you were fully yourself, fully unguarded, someone didn't show up for you the way you needed them to. Maybe they dismissed you, or maybe they were just absent, distracted by their own pain. But the message you received was clear. Your real self, your full self, is too much, or not enough, or somehow just not quite right. So you learned to offer a different version, a more palatable one. And it worked. People accepted this version, and you've been offering it ever since. In every friendship, every relationship, every crowded room you've ever walked into. But here's what happens over time. You forget that you're performing. The adapted self becomes so practiced, so automatic, that you lose touch with what's underneath. You start to wonder if there even is anything underneath. If maybe this careful, accommodating, slightly distant version of you is all there is. This is when the loneliness becomes most acute. Because it's not just that other people don't know you, it's that you're not sure you know yourself anymore. You've been shape-shifting for so long that you've lost track of your original form. And so you stand in crowds feeling like a ghost, present but not present, seen but not known, connected to dozens of people and deeply understood by none of them. The worst part is that you can't simply decide to stop. Because this adaptation isn't just a habit, it's a survival mechanism that lives in your body, not your mind. Your rational brain can understand that you're safe now, that you don't need to monitor and adjust and perform anymore. But your nervous system doesn't trust that. It remembers when you did need to do those things, and it's not convinced the danger has passed. This is why you can be at a party, telling yourself to just relax, just be yourself, and still feel that familiar tension in your chest. That awareness that you're slightly outside of everything happening around you. That sense that if you let your guard down completely, something bad will happen, even though you can't name what that something is. What you're experiencing has a name in psychology: attachment-related hypervigilance. It's what happens when early relationships teach you that connection is conditional, that love has to be earned, that your authentic self is somehow not quite enough to be accepted as you are. And the loneliest thing about this is that you're surrounded by people going through their own versions of the same thing. You're not the only person at the party who feels like this. You're just the only person who thinks they're the only person. Everyone is performing some version of themselves they think is more acceptable than who they really are. Everyone is monitoring and adjusting and trying to fit in while simultaneously feeling separate. But no one talks about it, because to talk about it would be to reveal the very vulnerability everyone is trying to hide. So you all stand together, feeling alone, never knowing that the person next to you is feeling exactly the same way. And maybe that's the quiet truth underneath all of this. Not that you're broken or damaged or doing something wrong, but that you're human in a world that hasn't taught most of us how to be human together. A world that rewards performance over presence, image over authenticity, comfort over truth. You feel lonely in crowds because you learned early that real connection requires making yourself small. And now you're living the consequence of that learning. The strange, quiet grief of being surrounded by people and still feeling unseen. Not because you were weak, but because you were intelligent enough to adapt, because you were sensitive enough to notice what was needed and brave enough to provide it, even when it meant hiding yourself. The loneliness isn't a flaw in you. It's evidence of how hard you've worked to belong in a world that never quite made space for all of who you are. And perhaps that's enough for now. Not a solution, but a recognition that the feeling has a source, that it makes sense, that you're not imagining it and you're not alone in feeling alone. You're just finally noticing what's been true all along.